So you work on infrastructure, and you gave me a master class on this. So big systems that support cities in our societies, like clean water systems, transportation networks, and coastal protections. How is community infrastructure part of the shift from standardization to personalization?
A lot of times it's easy to get focused on the problem or the system and lose sight of the individual. None of you needs a water treatment plant, right? You all need clean water. None of us needs an interstate. We need to be able to get to our people, to work, to school, to opportunity. So I think what really drives infrastructure is that it's a means to an end, right? It needs to serve us. And in this country, in many countries, we have built infrastructure that we are in service of. We are paying off things that have been decaying or damaging, and we're not set up to make that transformation. And so what I'm incredibly excited about is that in the last few years, Congress has, out of character, passed multiple pieces of legislation that move hundreds of billions of dollars worth of funding for climate smart, resilient infrastructure. So now our challenge is figuring out how do we not just replace what we had, but how do we build what we need next?
So how do you define resilience across all these different levels of work that you and your organization do?
So resilience in my world oftentimes looks like something that didn't happen, right? A storm hit, but the community wasn't flooded. So you have to think about how you pay for resilience and how you define it in every single project before you start. Otherwise, you won't actually be able to pay for the projects.
How do you translate this into higher ed or big business? Because remember, their resilience has a great dependency on our community's resilience.
Yeah. So I can translate it directly to big business with an example. So the Gulf Coast of Texas has almost all of the country's aviation fuel. And when Hurricane Harvey rolled through, all of these companies had done heroic work to make their operations more resilient. And one public bridge wasn't maintained and cut off access to all these sites, chemical plants, refineries, and we had a series of explosions. And so my team and I, we tend to ask two questions to get at resilience. The first one is, who loses money if we don't get this right? A lot of times the answer is a private company loses money if the public sector doesn't get its infrastructure right. The second question is, who suffers if we don't get this right? And that's the communities that are downstream of that chemical plant explosion, who are downwind of whatever ended up in the air. If you combine those two questions, that gets you to what resilience looks like and what it translates to, not just in the public sector, but where the public sector is a choke point or an enabler for private sector resilience.
In many respects, you're in the risk management business.
Yeah.
What is the connection between the work you do and how the organizations and educational institutions in these communities manage risk?
What our team does is we focus on where we can build systems that serve what we need now and what we need next, instead of being in service to the systems that we had. And that goes from the individual level of enabling growth out to having something more flexible and dynamic and being able to answer that question of, what do you stop doing? What do you not need anymore?